How does one man, operating with a fractured spine and a single functioning eye, liberate an entire fortified city from the Nazi war machine in a single night, armed with nothing but a submachine gun and a sack of grenades? In the rigid mathematics of military doctrine, this scenario is not just improbable, it is an absolute tactical absurdity. Yet, in April 1945, the Dutch city of Zwolle witnessed exactly that. A German garrison of thousands, entrenched with heavy armor and interlocking MG-42 machine gun nests, was entirely broken. Not by an Allied battalion, not by a mechanized flanking maneuver, but by a single ghost who hacked their acoustic environment and weaponized their own psychological conditioning against them. His name was Leo Major, and this is the tactical anatomy of how one broken soldier dismantled an army. To understand the scale of this anomaly, we must first look at the weapon system aimed at the city. The Canadians were preparing to unleash a sustained barrage of heavy 25-pounder field guns. A single high-explosive shell from a 25-pounder creates a lethal fragmentation radius of over 100 yards. The objective was total architectural and biological deletion. To walk into the zero coordinate of that impending strike zone is an act of tactical suicide. But Leo Major did not adhere to standard doctrine. To understand how one man breaks a garrison, we must first analyze his weaponization of the physical environment. When Major crossed the perimeter, he did not attempt to silently assassinate sentries one by one. That is a cinematic fabrication. In a densely populated urban grid, a single missing sentry triggers an alarm. Instead, Major initiated a protocol of severe sensory overload. The architecture of a medieval European city, the narrow cobblestone streets, the dense brick facades, the enclosed alleyways, acts as a massive acoustic amplifier. Sound does not dissipate here. It reflects, fractures, and multiplies. Major exploited this specific physics. He would sprint to a German checkpoint, detonate a Mills bomb, and fire a sustained, sweeping burst from his Sten submachine gun. Before the surviving German soldiers could establish a fix on his position, cycle the bolts on their long, cumbersome Kar 98K rifles, and return fire, Major was already gone. He utilized the lateral alleyways, moving at a dead sprint to a completely different sector of the city, and repeated the violent process. Grenade, automatic fire, relocate. To a German commander sitting in a reinforced bunker, analyzing the acoustic data pouring in from multiple sectors simultaneously, the conclusion was terrifyingly logical. The explosions were too far apart, the gunfire too rapid and varied to be a single unit. The auditory footprint strongly suggested a massive, multi-directional Canadian battalion had already infiltrated the city. He was not fighting the soldiers, he was hacking the physical environment to project the illusion of an army. When an army is conditioned to operate exclusively within a rigid framework of military doctrine, chaos becomes its single greatest vulnerability. The German commanders in Zwolle were seasoned veterans. They understood siege warfare, logistical supply lines, and highly organized defense in depth. What they were entirely unprepared for was an enemy who operated without logic, without a fire team, and without the instinct for self-preservation. Standard doctrine dictates that an attacking force must consolidate its gains before pushing forward. Leo Major never consolidated. He moved like a virus. After securing a prisoner during his acoustic hit-and-run assaults, he did not establish a fallback position. He simply handed the terrified German soldier his weapon back, pointed him toward the Canadian lines outside the city, and ordered him to run. This was a calculated injection of panic directly into the German hive mind. A dead soldier tells no tales, but a terrified, fleeing soldier retreating through his own lines spreads chaos. They carried the message that the perimeter was lost. The climax of this psychological warfare occurred not in a street firefight, but inside the local Gestapo headquarters. Major did not assault the building with overwhelming force. He bypassed the perimeter guards entirely, men who were scanning the dark horizon for Canadian Sherman tanks, completely blind to a single man utilizing the shadows of their own stationary defensive line. He walked through the front door. Inside, he encountered the commanding SS officer in an adjacent tavern. Major did not initiate a firefight. Instead, he engaged in high-stakes psychological manipulation. Speaking fluent French, he informed the SS officer that the Canadian First Army had already surrounded the city, and that the massive, indiscriminate artillery barrage scheduled for 0600 hours would level the Gestapo headquarters first. He offered them a choice: stay and be vaporized by high explosives, or surrender the city to the advance party, which, of course, consisted solely of him. The German officer, exhausted, listening to the echoes of gunfire Major had strategically seeded across the city moments prior, and seeing his own patrols failing to return, believed the lie. The rigid, mathematical German mind could not comprehend that this level of systemic chaos was being generated by one broken man with a submachine gun. Technology and fortified walls failed because Major bypassed them entirely, targeting the human mind instead. Until this point in our analysis, Leo Major has appeared as a tactical ghost, a perfectly optimized anomaly hacking the physics of an entire city. It is easy to view asymmetrical warfare through the cold, sanitized lens of military history, treating the participants as mere data points on a map. But war is never sanitized, and the most terrifying aspect of the Zwolle Anomaly is the psychological catalyst that triggered it. Major did not enter the city as a one-man army by design. The mission protocol called for a two-man reconnaissance team. His partner was Corporal Willy Arsenault, his closest friend. Their objective was strictly intelligence gathering, map the German defensive lines, estimate the garrison size, and return to base before the Canadian artillery erased the city at 0600 hours. They failed. Shortly after crossing the perimeter, near a secluded farmhouse on the city's edge, their acoustic discipline slipped. A German patrol heard them. Arsenault was killed almost instantly by a burst of machine gun fire. This is the exact moment the tactical mathematics of the operation shattered. Standard doctrine dictates that upon contact and the loss of 50% of a reconnaissance element, the surviving unit must immediately abort, retreat, and call in the artillery strike. Major did not retreat. He retrieved his friend's weapon, secured his remaining ammunition, and made a decision born of absolute, unrestrained grief. The calculated hit-and-run tactics, the acoustic deception, the storming of the Gestapo headquarters, none of it was a planned military operation. It was a localized, hyper-violent vendetta. He was not trying to save the city of Zwolle. He was determined to make the German garrison pay for a single life. The psychological collapse of the German high command was not engineered by a tactical genius following a master plan. It was engineered by a broken, one-eyed soldier who had simply stopped caring if he survived the night. The SS officer in the tavern did exactly what Major calculated. He didn't fight, he ran. He bypassed his own chain of command and broadcasted a catastrophic tactical assessment to the entire garrison. "The city is surrounded. Canadian armor is advancing. Evacuate immediately." The acoustic illusion was now an official order. What followed was a systemic breakdown of a highly disciplined military force. A panicked, disorganized mass exodus. Thousands of heavily armed German troops abandoned their fortified positions, their heavy armor, and their heavy weapons. They funneled across the river, bottlenecking on the bridges in a desperate attempt to escape the Phantom Battalion. Major spent the remaining hours of darkness methodically clearing the streets, hunting down the stragglers and strays. He set fire to the Gestapo headquarters, creating a massive beacon of psychological terror in the night sky. The flames illuminated the retreating German columns, confirming their worst fears. The city was burning from within. By 0400 hours, the tactical map of Zwolle was completely devoid of German defensive assets. They were gone. A garrison of thousands had been routed by a single, grieving soldier armed with a stamped metal submachine gun. When the Canadian First Army prepared to fire their artillery barrage at 0600 hours, they received a transmission. The message was short, impossible, and mathematically absurd. Hold fire. The city of Zwolle is entirely secure. The Canadian commanders demanded verification. Standard doctrine could not process the intelligence that Zwolle was already liberated. At 0900 hours on April 14th, the Canadian First Army finally advanced into the city limits of Zwolle. They had prepared for a brutal block-by-block urban bloodbath. Instead, they walked into a perfectly silent, intact city. The formidable German garrison of thousands had entirely vanished, broken by a phantom battalion of one. In the center of this eerie silence, they found the Anomaly himself. Leo Major was not celebrating. He was not standing victorious over the city he had just saved from total architectural deletion. Instead, he had returned to the farmhouse. He was carrying the body of Corporal Willy Arsenault. The wrath that had consumed the city was gone, replaced only by the quiet weight of immense grief. For executing the most impossible infiltration of the Second World War, Major was offered the Distinguished Conduct Medal. It is the highest award for gallantry short of the Victoria Cross. Standard military protocol dictates immense gratitude, but Leo Major operated outside of standard protocol. In an act of supreme, unapologetic defiance, he refused it. He formally stated that General Bernard Montgomery, the commander who would have pinned the medal on his chest, was militarily incompetent and therefore morally unworthy of handing out medals to the men who actually bled. He rejected the sanitized narrative of heroism. He rejected the mathematics of a high command that viewed men as expendable assets on a tactical map. The Zwolle Anomaly remains a foundational glitch in the history of military science. It proves a terrifying truth. Warfare can never be entirely reduced to a clean, predictable mathematical equation. You can calculate blast radiuses. You can calculate interlocking fields of fire, troop density, and logistical supply lines. But there is no algorithm for the human soul. There is no tactical formula that can accurately predict the violence of action generated by a broken man who has lost his closest friend in the dark. When logic failed, chaos won. He was a ghost. He was a systemic anomaly. He was Leo Major. So, the next time you read a declassified file about a single soldier dismantling an entire garrison, disregard the Hollywood fabrications. Heroes in movies win with unlimited ammunition and a predictable script. In reality, the most dangerous weapon on a battlefield is not heavy artillery, and it is not a super soldier. It is a broken human mind with absolutely nothing left to lose. If you want to continue analyzing the darkest corners of asymmetrical warfare, tactical anomalies, and the psychology of the men who broke the math of war, confirm your security clearance by subscribing to this channel. Until the next tactical briefing, stay in the shadows. End transmission.